Fact and figures, in reality, is a serious problem.
Oh, okay.
It's a serious problem, but a lot of people would like to situate the blame, at the foot of the government only. But it's beyond that. Government has its own share of the blame. The society, our schools, and individuals. Everybody has their part of the blame, including the youth. If you go into perspectives, because when people talk about things, they always talk about Nigeria or situations generally as if life started just yesterday or this morning. Time was in this country when you have all these industrial estates in Lagos, in the Solo, Ojota, Oshodi, Lupeju, Ogba, many of them. And there was a time when, during the military reign of Olusegun Obasanjo, what he did had two sides for Nigeria. But part of what we are witnessing today took its root from that time. What did he do? Indigenization decree. Military Obasanjo regime, it's like, military was spent only 6 months. So in between them, it's like it should have been part of their agenda. But it's like when Obasanjo now took over, it took shape. So that was when some banks, I wonder whether you knew Barclays Bank back then. That was the bank my father used. So Barclays Bank became Union Bank. They were all foreign banks. Standard Bank became First Bank. In short, Nigerian government nationalized certain businesses which are foreign companies, banks, oil companies. That was when British Petroleum became African Petroleum, and many unlike that. So when that happened, the first thing was government took the companies over, and Nigerian managers rose to become directors. So it made a lot of Nigerians assume capacity some didn't have at that point in time. That's a fact. And many of them ran the companies. Some ran it well, some ran their businesses, ran the companies aground. So the problem started taking root from that time. And another thing is, the West, they were shocked. That was in 1976. Nigeria was only 16 years old as an independent country. And already Nigeria was at the forefront of a fight against apartheid in South Africa. Nigeria was in the forefront of fight against apartheid in Angola, Rhodesia then, which became Zimbabwe. So Nigeria had this influence. And when Nigeria took that step, I think the way the government explained it then was part of Africanism, it's like Africanization, and so Nigeria nationalized many foreign companies, So I can't remember all of them, but I always remember Standard Bank, which became First Bank, and Barclays Bank, which became Union Bank, and British Petroleum. I always remember those ones, but anybody can research. So what did the West, what did they do? They went back. They talked to many of their people who had businesses in Africa, particularly Nigeria, to start divesting. So over 5-10 years, many of those companies gradually left. I remember back then in Ojota, there used to be one pharmaceutical company. Around Billingsway, there was a pharmaceutical company. Because whenever we went through all those places, we saw all of them. So they started divesting gradually, because they just realized that, okay, if these people, let's assume these people have mastered the banking business very well, and maybe oil, they believe they can do it, they will come back later for all these businesses. So, and once they started disinvesting in Nigeria, they took back their capital. And what are the four majors of production? Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So the entrepreneurs left, capital left. So the problem started gradually from there up till. So then on the part of our own people, corruption, because some of our own national companies too, like Nigeria Airways, Nigerian National Shipping Line, and many of them like that were run aground by people. So corruption is part of the problem that took us to this point. Then policy of that time is part of the problem. So let me just stop there for now.
Because I really like that you took us, like it was a history class, taking it from the background, and that's a good start for this conversation. But again, having established, you've shared part of the history, do you think that, because again you said that you can't put all the blames on the government, you said the government, family, society, and even the youth themselves all have a part to share, in this unemployment thing. And so for the side of the government now, do you think that government has learned enough lesson from what has happened in the past? And do you think that government is working towards, turning back the hands of time and doing the proper thing?
Yes, I would say government learned their lessons, but it's one thing learning your lesson, it's another thing, it's like if I offend you now, I could go back thinking about, oh, I offended that woman. So if I come back to beg you, I have begged you, you have forgiven me, or let's say you might forgive me, but you may not forget. For 8 years of Obasanjo as president, in his second coming as civilian president, 1999 to 2007, he traveled, over virtually every country in the world, seeking foreign investors. How many responded? We only have investors from China, and we have investors from South Africa. Then we have investors. It's not as if Americans are not there with their money. It's not as if British investors are not there. No, they are coming gradually, but it's like they have learned their lessons since that time. So you don't see them now coming with their equipment, with their manufacturing. You don't see. So government has learned their lessons. Even look at the current Mr. President. Is working very hard to attract investment, and the response has been good, but it might have been better. Another thing that has added to that, however, is that by the time that one happened, in between the time, China stepped in. That was when the Western countries started outsourcing their manufacturing jobs to China. Now, that's where the education gap comes in. If you go to China today, for instance, and let's say you need skilled workers in a particular area, you can have several skills. Their population is part of what helps them anyway. But you can have skilled workers in, let's say, 20 areas, and all the skilled workers in each area will fill spaces as big as the whole of LTV compound, So it's like you can say, okay, fill up a stadium with 10 areas of skill, and you need competent workers. You get it in China. Do we have that one in Nigeria? So China, so this, even the Western investors or manufacturers, that's part of the problem they have in America now as a country themselves, that the jobs are no longer there because many of their manufacturers have outsourced their manufacturing to China because of, well, they call it cheap labor, but China will tell you it's not cheap labor in so much as it meets their own,
source of livelihood
need. It's just like if, for instance, the same kind of job you will do, that maybe they will pay you, let's say $3,000 in the US. If you do it in Nigeria and they pay you $1,000, do you know how much that one will mean naira to you? And it will be so sufficient for you, and you believe you are living good. But to them it's cheap because maybe that worker would have earned $3,000, but they are paying you $1,000 here, and you are doing the same thing. So that's what happens in China. So to the West, it was cheap labor, but then to China, but because they have everything needed, the skilled workers, power supply, logistics, road network, everything. Everybody knows where China is today compared to anywhere else in the world.
Okay, you mentioned something now, talking about skills, and that is one edge that China as a country has. But again, because here, white-collar jobs, everyone, I think are we getting to that point where we're beginning to see that everyone doesn't have to go the way of the white-collar job? There is need to diversify into entrepreneurship, because you have a lot of graduates who are leaving school every year. thousands of students are graduating, leaving the university, coming into the labor market, and there are not enough jobs that can accommodate them. And how important is it for the government of the day to begin to see the need to, begin to open up platforms where these graduates can be trained in skills that can help their livelihoods?
That's the approach government has always taken, and it's wrong, in my view. Why do you have to let them finish school before you start now asking them to train? In the UK, for instance, there are universities which offer courses in fashion designing. You want to go to school, you want to be a university graduate, but at the same time you want to be a fashion designer. Why go to university for 4 years, read one course that is not relevant to you, or rather that you won't apply your mind to, So, and now come out again to start. And at some point, if you now go to a fashion school, you could feel like, I'm already a graduate. So, human being, there's a way we think. You may not apply yourself, except you are so passionate about it. But so what if you now have our universities having courses in fashion designing, footwear design? You have courses like that in the UK, many universities. You have footwear designs in Italy. You have, I think, 1 or 2 universities that I know of in Canada that do all such things. So why don't we have that one in our own schools in Nigeria? But they would limit such to technical schools. Why? There's enough to learn in fashion, design, many things. That's one. And then there are some courses which, in my own view, they should have, I won't say they should have cancelled them, but maybe our university curriculum needs to be reinvented. Let me give you an example. If, for instance, you want to go and read history, fine, history is good. I'm not saying it's not good. But if I would advise the Minister of Education today, I would just say, okay, why not make it theater arts and history, or mass communication and history? You know why? If you read theater arts and history, by the time you finish, you have enough materials to produce historical movies, documentaries, because though you still need to do research and many things, but you have been trained in school, you have learned history, all the Lishabi, all the Ogumola, all the Akaribo, whichever, you have learned them in school. You have learned about history of Africa in Ghana, Songhai Empire, many empires, you have learned that, and you are a theater artist. So if you want to write, so that's double skill. But if it's mass comm plus history, for instance, you can start producing documentaries. And you don't need to now work in a TV house. You can start doing it on YouTube. So because you already have your material, you have the skill, as a mass comm person, maybe you read broadcasting, journalism. I think they have broken it into many courses now. But you have, and then you have history as your, let me say, your raw material. So you can start a YouTube channel, and soft skill like that, you are making your money. So you are getting fully employed like that. You get my point? So there are many courses like that. Like, okay, why not make makeup one of these courses they can learn in universities? And you now take some courses in nursing, like maybe dressing of wounds, and small things you can match with it together, so that it will fill up 4 or 3 years, or because in the UK, like I said, they learn fashion up to master degree level. So why not here? Although things are changing, like in Lagos, for instance. But maybe if we get to work on government or do what has government been doing, maybe I could talk about that.
Absolutely, we'll come to that part, what government is doing in Lagos. But again, before we get to that part now, still talking about why things are not the way they are, citing examples from how it is in other climes. The certificate now, the BSc certificate, and having a certification from learning a skill, there's kind of a disparity. People tend to look down on certifications you get from learning a skill like handwork. And so again, because you mentioned government, family, society, youth, and thinking about it on the part of the society, I think one of the ways society has also contributed to unemployment is looking down on certification. So they'll say, oh, you're not a BSc holder, and there's some certain way that people will view you. But how what are you expecting from society moving forward, to transform where we are at the moment, to seeing that whether you go to school as a graduate or you learn a skill, that we all can have level grounds?
You have said part of it. People look down on you if you, for instance, you didn't go to school, your parents don't feel good. But then, if you go to school, you work in government office or bank or anything, you wait for 30 days before you earn your pay. But if I repair, maybe if I fix solar, for instance, solar installation, I can, within a month, I can do 4 or 5 jobs. And each one, after buying materials, paying for labor and everything, each one could maybe fetch me, could fetch me what you will earn as a salary in a month, if you work in government office. So society has that problem. And again, people don't let their children, learn trade and skills anymore. There was a day I was at my watch repairer shop. I saw that the guy has been the only one I've always seen in his shop for like maybe 12, 15 years. I've been patronizing him. So I had to ask that, why don't you look for apprentices? He said, where are they? Where are they? So the youth of today, we have to change our orientation as a society at large. All of them, they want, instead of skill, they prefer hustle. Ride Okada, work in factories, and, they want to make a living now. They want to earn their money now. So, and they don't know that there are certain things, that you can do at a certain age, and in another 5 years, you won't be able to do it anymore. Maybe because of your strength, stamina, and stuff like that. If you ride Okada for 10 years, from age 20 to 30, your body won't be the same. You can't be my age, for instance, and still, you won't enjoy yourself doing it. And with all the number of years you have put into it, it will still not have been able to provide for your needs adequately. So why don't you rather learn a skill that you devote 2-3 years, learn something that, that will last you for a lifetime, and that's the problem of the society. You have, like I said, you said part of it, people tend to look down on certain, until you need them, you now know that they are very, very important. That is one. Then for the youth on their own, how many are employable? It's a big question I always ask people. How many youth are employable? Many of them went through school forging results, forging certificates, And at the end of the day, when you now finish, I don't know, maybe, but you could have come across 1 or 2, even your organization here, that you will start asking yourself, did this one actually go to school? And many of them serve. But to write 10 sentences is a problem for them, And you start asking yourself, did this one actually go to school? That's one. That's part of the problem of the youth on their own. Then many of them that could even have been in some skills go to many neighborhoods today. Many, you will find them now, they're on drugs. Now, there was a time I used to have a car wash. So that day, I just went there. It was a weekend. I just felt, well, let me go and see what was happening. The guy who was there, when I saw him, I almost shouted. I was afraid. I thought he was dead. So it was later they told me that he was on Colo, that drug. Because he sat there like a statue, just staring. I thought he was dead. He was eating, but the food, so it was just like you are recording and they say freeze. Like if you are acting, and okay, freeze before we take another shot. So he was just there, spoon, the food, he was there like that, staring. So I had to tap him severally before he could come back. And many people have come to the car wash. They have horned, called. He didn't show up.
That will also impact your business.
And, I had in mind I had somebody there. So if people now told you later that it was your place, they didn't see anybody, you will say, no, he was there because you are sure. But he was there useless. So many of our youths have their own problems too. You know, so because when you talk of employment, it's not government job only, or rather white collar job only. So then family too. Some families you'll be shocked. Let me tell you one thing. There was a day I was reading about Yahoo Boys Mothers Association. I was shocked. You know, they said maybe EFCC bust a party they were having in Oshogbo. They said they were having a party, so EFCC and some women, some mothers, had the gut to get together to go to EFCC to like protest. They call themselves Yahoo. So when I read it online though, and I was like, so I discussed with some people. They said, yeah, that some people now see fraud, internet fraud, cyber crime as an industry. Somebody even told me that, you know, that one is a web designer. So he said in the estate where he lived, they saw that he has a car, he lives well, and some of the time he will be working at the balcony of his house. With his laptop. So a man came one day with his son that he wanted him to teach him Yahoo. And he was like, what do you mean Yahoo? So he pretended as if he never heard of it.
So the family system has failed.
So the man starts saying, look, I want my own boy to have soft life like you. Most of the time you don't go out, but you see the way you live, see your car. And he has two cars. So he told him, look, I don't do Yahoo. So that was when he decided to have an office so that he would leave house
and start going to
office. So they know that he left home. So he had to now look for money that he should have used for something else to get a space. You know, so that's part of the problem of the family. And again, another thing is, many family, they would do everything to just make sure their son or daughter jackpot, you know, just go abroad. What is he going to? What is he or she going to do abroad? They don't know. Okay, while he's here, let him or her get a job. They are not interested. They are just, you know, just finding means of making sure she leaves the country.
Okay, you've explicitly, you know, given a breakdown of how these institutions have fared, and I mean, from the conversation, not so well, if I would mark it that way. But let's now come back to Lagos State and see, from your own perspective, what the government has been doing, the government of the day has been doing to ensure that the issue of unemployment is tackled.
Are you aware of what the governor just commissioned at Mushin of recent? Shoemaking hub. You know, and it's not what the government approach to it is that if you are skilled, I think they still build their capacity for them. So government has provided virtually everything you will need. So I think government will provide them with materials as well. And the moment they finish making the shoes, government will still serve as the off-taker. Because that's part of the problem. And that's part of the problem Nigerian societies to, you know, contribute. You see your shoemaker having made a good shoe, but you still want to buy one made in Italy, even if it's Tokumbo. You get my point? And I tell you, for shoemaking especially, and I'm not even talking about guys, I've seen two ladies, two young women. If you see what these women do, belt, bag, shoes, both male and female. And these are, so, but some of the time, Nigerians won't buy from them. Somebody was telling me of her own experience one day. She said ordinarily she would always go to Dubai to buy things. But when Asiwaju came into power in 2023 and he removed subsidy, he stopped the flotation of Naira and, you know, stuff like that. And, you know, money was scarce everywhere. So she needed, so it was a woman, she needed some fashion items. And somebody now referred that to one woman. That woman is not even in Lekki, in Magodo of this part of Lagos. The woman is in K2. She said she just felt, well, let me try her. But by the time the woman finished sewing, all the design she gave, from a catalog, she said she regretted going to Dubai all along because she will always go to shop in Dubai. So she said she regretted it because that woman was there in K2. She did everything she would have got in Dubai. So that's the part of the problem that our societies contribute. We don't patronize our own thing because that's why they too will now make it in Lagos and put made in Italy. That's why if you now have your fashion designers as trained in universities, they too will be proud to put made in Lagos on it. Maybe she read footwear design or whatever in University of Lagos or LASU or wherever. She'll be proud to put made in Lagos, made in Nigeria on it. So that's part of the problem society has.
We must leave this conversation here. We've had very thought-provoking conversations about unemployment and entrepreneurship here, and our guest, Public Affairs Analyst Laide Akano, has given a breakdown, of how institutions have not done well. But hopefully, we know. But in Lagos, again, you have given kudos to the state government and what they have done. Thank you so much.
Where logistics hub is there, let our youth take up farming opportunities Lagos government has provided. If I was in that age category, I would take up the opportunity, but I'm beyond that age category.
All right. Thank you so much for your time on the conversation.
My pleasure.
The program continues shortly. Stay with us.